have a STEM mindset or a STEM identity? Helen?
I think a STEM mindset is all about a growth mindset. It's all about learning how to continuously learn. It's about exploration. It's about not being afraid to make mistakes and learn from them, because that's exactly how we grow. We never, you know, if you get something right the first time, you always wonder, what did I miss? What could I have learned from that? It's kind of like when I used to write my programs a long time ago and they used to work the first time. I know something went wrong, because it's like, it's impossible. There has to be something to learn from. So I think it's all about just continuing to learn from you know, all your experiences and take that as a platform for you to get into areas and challenge yourselves into areas that you wouldn't necessarily have dared to try.
And did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, you answered exactly what I was going to say. So I think it's interesting to say, hey, I never fail. Either I win or I learn, you know? I think that is just complementary in terms of, hey, it's the creativity, it's the problem solving, is the kind of failure is not a problem, right? So it's just one more thing that you learned. So I think that actually develops, again, the grit and the perseverance that I think it's extremely important. So for me, the STEM mindset is all about growth mindset and all about this never give up.
Do either of you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I'll just echo the same sentiment, and I think of the impact of what if somebody or some company did not have people with a STEM mindset. So think about how the Apple first came out with the iPhone in 2007, and if they didn't have a STEM mindset and just stopped there, that would mean that there wouldn't be selfies because the first iPhone didn't have a front-facing camera, or I would get lost a whole lot more because there wasn't GPS, or I'd be incredibly bored on the plane because I wouldn't have a full movie to watch. So I think just look at what the world would be like if companies and people didn't have a STEM mindset. You would be stagnant.
Great. Well, today, when some of the students were coming on campus, talkSTEM actually engaged them in a QR code scavenger hunt. Did you all enjoy that process of going around campus? Yes? And so I'd love to ask each one of you that, you know, STEM, as you think about it, right, or being a person in technology, what are kind of your thoughts on the kind of school or classroom experiences that maybe you would have liked to have had, you know, when you were younger, that might have made a difference?
I would have liked to have a computer that I would play with, because when I went to school, computers were not readily available in the classrooms. I think, you know, I went to a school where it was a very, very structured education, and we had very set classes and exams, which was, you know, of course, great. But, you know, thinking about it again, I would have loved to have had the freedom to actually go and look at things that, you know, I was passionate about. Maybe learn about something that wasn't on the curriculum and go and just research it and, you know, understand better about it. Participate more in group type of activities and projects at a young age, because I think one of the things that we find with fresh graduates is that in the workplace, they might be really, really good at doing something, but a lot of times they're not as used to working with teams. And I think it's extremely important in a workplace that to make it about the team. It's not just about the individual contributor. It's about how the entire team can work together and can help each other succeed. And you take the concept of the team and you scale it up to, you know, the organization within the company and then the entire company. So I think there is a lot of room for growth around, you know, the education system and getting people to also understand how life is going to be in the workplace and be prepared for it so they know what they're getting into.
Maya? would you like to add to that?
Yeah, you know, I think I'll just build on what Dahlia said. You know, I think when we teach STEM and specifically computer science, I think there's a real emphasis in school on making the individual a great coder and a great developer, a great infrastructure architect. But what Dahlia said is, you know, being able to work with other human beings is equally as important. We're doing something at American Airlines right now called pair programming, where you have two developers who are working on the same set of code. One developer will develop for a period of time while the other developer is really checking their work. Then they switch. And although you're investing two people on one set of code, the idea is that the quality of that code is going to be a lot better. So you're actually going to get faster because you're going to develop higher quality code. Well, working with another human being who's watching what you're doing and is correcting what you're doing is, you know, there's a lot of social emotional aspects to that. And if you can't get comfortable with that, if you can't get comfortable with the idea that you're not going to be working by yourself all the time, then it's going to be a difficult experience. So I would encourage the schools to be adopting that aspect as well, the group dynamic, the collaborative, the cooperative, the human connection, rather than just thinking of STEM as a very isolated activity.
Anne, I was going to ask you, so what did you do outside of school that you think helped you on your career path? And yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I mean, I will say a classic one, but sports, you know, so sports, I think, really unleashed this competitive side and kind of the discipline aspect of it. So the team aspect of it as well, working in teams, making mistakes and having to carry the team. And so sports was a big one. Actually, another one that helped me was I'm very, how do you say, adventurous. So, you know, I've done bungee jumping, skydiving, swimming with anacondas, and all sort of stuff. And
Quite exciting. I'm sure there's a story there.
Yes. My husband said, okay, now I have a 9-year-old boy. I regret I didn't put their picture here, but they're not in the audience, so that's okay. But he said, hey, please don't die until at least he's 18 years old. So I stopped doing, you know, this kind of things. But I mean, I remember like growing up, I was really scared of snakes. And then I went and I took a picture of a snake around my neck, and I never dreamed about snakes again. But it's kind of like facing your fears actually really helped me when I had those moments that were really scary, and I said, hey, I've done that already. I already jumped the plane, and you know, so that also helped me take more risks, which in the end were good.
Yeah. Helen, would you like to add to that? No?
I will.
Yeah. Okay, good, Maya.
For me, it was theater. I was very involved from a very young age, and I think getting over your fear of standing in front of people and really communicating to people, I think is really important for any field that you want to go into.
That is true. Dahlia, I think you wanted to add something to that?
Yeah, I would actually like to share a story. So first time I went on stage and presented, I think I had been out of college 2 years maybe, and I thought it was going to be a small room, but it was in Paris, and I think I could have sworn there was like 1,000 people in the auditorium. It was probably less than 100, but I just felt like it was. I went on stage and I had prepared my material. It was great. And I went there and I just froze. I was just, it's like I felt like my temperature was, you know, over the top, and I read through my slides and just ran off. That became actually one of the things that I wanted to take as a challenge. It's like, hey, if I'm working that hard and I'm, you know, this was the first project I was a lead on, and I wanted to really be proud of the teamwork that we've done and all of that I needed to actually challenge myself. So as soon as I came back, I enrolled myself in Toastmasters and stuck with it, and now I just enjoy public speaking. So I think always taking things that were, a point of fear and contention and actually challenging yourself. You feel so excited after you've actually, done that, because you've taken something that you considered a bit of a weakness and turned it into a strength.
Mm-hmm. You bet. Helen, if you wanted to answer this one, what do you wish someone had told you when you were in middle school, high school, maybe even in college, that would have made a difference to who you are today?
I wish that someone said to me, talk to yourself like you would talk to a good friend. So we are our harshest critic, and I wish that somebody would say to me, if your friend was going through the same situation, how would you talk to them? And then you're like, oh, I would not beat that person up and tell them that. So, yeah.
That's great.
That is a good one. Maya, did you have?
Not one as good as that. Yeah, I think it would be just, I think I would have told my younger self to not stress as much, that everything works out in the end, and no decision you make is irreversible, and really you're going to miss important moments of your life and miss the enjoyment of important moments if you're as stressed out as you might be about them.
So Anne, sorry, Dahlia, did you want to go?
I was going to add to that's all very much true, especially of women, beating themselves up and, stressing and all of that. One thing that I read that's actually really helpful is before you go to bed every day, write 3 things that you've done well that day. Mm-hmm. And that usually makes you, relax and feel good about, what you've done. And sometimes it's just, I brushed my teeth. So that was my accomplishment. But
Twice a day.
Yeah. But at least, it's like not every day is going to be a great day, but think about the things that you've done well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So Anne, you and I were talking about this earlier, but what technology and non-technology skills do you think helped you throughout your career path?
So a technology skill for me, it's actually the ability to look at the complex problem holistically and kind of understand the core of the problem quickly. So, and then of course getting the right people with the right talents and pulling that team together to solve that problem. So I think this has been the biggest skill from a technological perspective. From a non-technological perspective, I think the biggest thing that helped me go forward is being bold, right? It's really being out there. It's the quote that I put there: show up, speak up, participate, even if you're incomplete, even if you don't have the skills. I think this characteristic is probably the one that helped me the most come to where I am. So. Mm-hmm.
Maya, I know you had some thoughts on that as well.
If non-technology skills are around communication. If you can't take your idea and present it in a clear and compelling way, both in a written way and orally, then you're going to have a really hard time in whatever field you choose. And I would really advise students to look for opportunities, take classes that force you to write or that force you to present. It's one of those skills, just like all skills in life, where you get better the more you do it. And it is going to be hugely important as you continue in your career.
Did you want to?
Yeah, and when it comes to technology skills, I feel like it all boils down to data. If you have an understanding of data and databases and how data is organized, it unlocks so much of how you think about the world. So everything down to who has music on their phones? Raise your hand. Yeah, I think it's pretty much all of us. It is data. It is the songs, the lyrics, the album, the artist. All those are pieces of data that is being organized on your phone. And so I have found that one skill that I've learned from my days of designing databases, it unlocks so many of the way I'm able to see efficiencies in processes, because it's all around moving data around. And when it comes to non-technical skills, I would say remember the phrase, it's both tone and content. So what you, very much like what Maya is saying about communication, what you're saying is just as important as how you say it. So when you say something like, I'm fine, versus I'm fine. I said the same thing, but your tone makes a huge difference, and that in communication to others is incredibly important.
Dahlia?
Yeah, something I heard recently is people won't remember years down the road what you said to them, but they'll remember how you made them feel, which goes to communication. And I think it's really important to have those soft skills and be able to connect with people and be able to understand what motivates them and be able to show them the appreciation even for the small things that you do. And it goes back to what my fellow panelists were talking about in terms of the engagement of the teams and having them being energized and having them being contribute. So think about the emotional aspect of things and how you connect with people as well as the practical side of things.
So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Obviously, I work at the Communities Foundation of Texas, as Dave mentioned, and I lead an effort internally called CFD for Business, where we work with businesses and make it easy for them to give back in the community. So I can't help but ask each one of you a question about how do you think companies can use technology to impact lives and impact our communities? Do you have examples of maybe something your own companies are doing or things you have seen in the past or that you might be doing to use technology? Helen, I don't know, do you want to get this started or?
Yeah, I personally for Figable, I have found that we are in such a fast-paced world. I mean, I have 3 kids, and one that's in high school, one in middle school, one in elementary school, each of them in different sports. I'm traveling, my husband's traveling, and we are living in such a fast-paced world that I felt like I couldn't keep up with everything on paper. So digitizing the information, which has helped incredibly, just having our to-do list on an app and their behaviors on the app, I could instantaneously communicate within my family and with the kids' nanny and with their coaches and teachers all within one place. And that has, I think, a good use of technology to facilitate communication. Yeah.
Anne? Mm-hmm.
So I started on my introduction. I think technology is a great way of solving a lot of problems, right? And I'm a big believer, and that's one of the reasons why I'm passionate about technology. I mentioned the products, right? So if you think about it, that the things we all develop, they make the world safer. So, the electronics that go in cars, or the cameras in your houses, or different things, you're making it safer. And then you have the greener, right? So if you're automating a factory, you're getting less pollutants in the environment, or the car is theoretically going down on diesel. It needs to be checked a little bit more, but and then you have the fun aspect of it, right? So you can watch a movie, you can go to the all of this, or your phone. All of this, it's technology improving lives. If you think about the advances we are doing in medicine, right, and in treatments and all the surgeries that now you do it with little cameras and all this technology that it's saving lives. So this alone, for me, it's a huge contribution for the society. But for example, Texas Instruments was built on actually this giving back to the community. And we have a very strong connection with helping communities like United Way. For example, we have campaigns. Our CEO is actually the campaign chair. And we help a lot of different causes, and what I find is that the team coming together and doing a day of impact and going, I don't know, to build a house in Wiley, I think that's the last one that the team did, or having this community sense is also extremely helpful for us working together. So these are some of the examples. I think it was mentioned the high-tech high heels, which helps, you know, girls actually get interested in STEMs, do some physics camps, and get more familiar and comfortable with this kind of things. So there are so many opportunities. It's really encouraging.
Yeah. So while there are, obviously we know about the unique opportunities that are available to women in technology, there are also some serious implicit biases that exist in companies and in the community as well, as you think about STEM, or as you think about technology. And so have either of you faced some of these challenges, or can you share examples of such situations that you might have gone through or overcome? Maya, would you like
So
to?
I won't talk about any personal experiences, because I've been fortunate to work for a company that is really, you know, very gender blind and really champions women in all areas, including technology. But I had this really interesting experience where, because I know a lot of bias, especially gender bias, exists in STEM and in the world in general. And so interesting experience was in February over President's Day weekend, I went to New Orleans with my husband and son, and we did a walking tour of the French Quarter. It was a tour for teens, tweens and teens. And so there was my son and another girl who was about the same age, 12 or 13. And the tour guide was great. He was a former high school history teacher, and he'd grown up in New Orleans, and he knew everything about the cities, everything that you would want. Super engaging, and really spent the whole time just talking to the kids and teaching them about this, the city. But what was so interesting is just the way that he would ask them questions. So, for example, you know, we're on the top of the, you know, we're looking out over the Mississippi, and he turns to my son and he says, now why would this position right here be a really good, you know, strategic position to take up a battle, you know, a battle position? And then he would turn to the girl and he would say, you know, there were a lot of early settlers in New Orleans. You know, what kind of languages do you think they spoke? And then he would turn back to my son and he would say things like, you know, the fleur-de-lis, which is the symbol of New Orleans, what football team has that on their helmet? And then he'd turn to the girl and he'd say, what ingredients do you think are in beignets? You know, how do you make a beignet? And it was so funny because, you know, he had no idea he was doing it, and he really thought, you know, he was, you know, this was the way to engage these kids. But what the message they got was that boys like war, and boys are interested in sports, and girls like cooking and humanities. And you know, what's really hilarious is my son knows nothing about football, and he's really into cooking. And so, so I just think, you know, as girls, you know, we deliver these messages. You know, there's these studies that say, you know, especially at the 4th and 5th grade level, you know, teachers are telling girls, oh, you know what, math just isn't your thing. And what they're telling boys, yeah, right,
exactly.
What? And what they're telling boys is, you know, you're just not trying hard enough in math. And so, you know, if you're getting the message that this isn't your thing, you're saying, okay, well, I guess I should move on to what is my thing. But if you're getting the message, you know, you're just not trying hard enough, you're thinking, oh, well, you know, I want to do well, I'm going to try harder. And so we're really doing a disservice to girls, and we need to, as adults, we need to recognize that bias and how that's creeping into how we're interacting with kids. And as kids, we need to not buy into that at all. So if somebody ever tells you that math is not your thing and you like math, say, you know what, that's not true. Math is my thing, and I'm going to try harder if I'm not doing well in it.
Thank you. Dahlia, we were talking about, when we were on a panel call about the NASA astronaut costume, the spacesuit issues, and while there was several issues that kind of went into why the sizing didn't quite work out, tell me what your thoughts are on about why do women need to be at the table? Why is it important for women to be at the table when important decisions are being made?
We're half the population. So that's
true.
that's an accomplishment. So why would have the population give up the right to form products and to form opinions and delegate that to the other half? I think we have the exact right to have a seat at the table and to be able to contribute. Think about a lot of the products that get created, and if we don't have representation that mirrors the society, then we're losing on the opportunity on making them better. So that was a story around basically the spacewalk. I think it was in late March 29th. And it was going to be the first spacewalk in history where that was all women astronauts. And guess what? They only had one suit prepped that was a size medium. The others were size large. So they had to actually keep one of them back because they didn't have a suit that fit her size. I mean, you would think with NASA and the way that they have everything planned just to the nth degree, how could that not have, dawned on them? So I think a lot of it is just, it's not intentional by any means. It's a lot of it is basically people just sometimes forget, and I think it's up to us to remind them to take into account women's needs and how women are also entitled to be represented. And going back to some of the data that Maya was talking about in that story, I was reading in the mid-'80s, I think the representation of women graduates from STEM schools was about 37%, and that kind of mirrored the representation in the workplace. If you fast forward to today, it's about 17%. So it went down compared to the mid-1980s. And there are lots of theories around that, and one of them was around basically that's when Barbie dolls became really, really popular. And you had computers that were now personal computers being introduced at home, and it seems like the advertising was more geared towards girls. Oh, you belong with the Barbie dolls, and the boys were getting the computers. So they got a head start, in kind of understanding the computer science and analytics and things like that. So I think that's something that we have to be careful about and reverse that trend, so we don't unconsciously direct women or girls towards a certain field rather than boys.
Helen, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that is that being present at the table, having been in software in over 20 years and being at these different companies, I have found myself as the only woman in a room full of technologists, and I was at a cosmetics company where there were about 40 people, some in the room, some on the phone, but they were making decisions about cosmetics. And I was the only woman in the room. That's not a good thing. And that reminded me of a story of when a lot of these biases that come into the room isn't always not just what's told to you, but it's what you observe. So when my son was about 6 years old, and we were sitting in the piano studio, and he looks over at me and he says, "Mommy, is Mozart dead?" And I said, "Yes, Mozart's dead." "And is Tchaikovsky dead?" "Yes." Schubert, and then we go on, and he listed all these different famous male composers that are dead, and then he stopped and he said, "Do boys with long hair die?" and I looked up and I was like, "Oh yeah, they're all dead." and I said, "You know what? You made a really great decision, or made a great observation based on the knowledge based on the data that's in front of you. all of these portraits are boys with long hair, and your father's bald, and your brother has short hair, and your uncle has short hair. They're not dead, so we're good. And being the Jersey girl that I am, I had to introduce him to Steven Tyler and Axl Rose and John Bon Jovi and of course Jared Leto from 30 Seconds to Mars. You know, they're awesome. And just, it's, imagine if that I was able to, if I wasn't there to provide that perspective, he'd walk around thinking that boys with long hair would die. And so it's offering that extra perspective in the room.
Yeah, so I think there are countless studies about, you know, how profitability increases if you have diverse teams making decisions, how it is important to have diverse on product decisions and things like that. But actually thinking about this, for me, it goes back to, I think we were asking this question too much, right? So why is it good to have women at the table? Why don't we ask, why is it good to have men on the table? I mean, whenever I get this answer, then I can answer as well, why is it good to have women on the table too?